Welcome to On-Chain Reaction. I'm Philip Gradwell, the Chief Economist at Chainalysis, here to take you through what's been happening on the blockchain over the last few weeks. Well, it's an exciting time to be in cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has now spent multiple weeks with its price above $10,000. It's only the third time in Bitcoin's history that the price has been above 10K for multiple weeks. And due to those high prices, there's been a very large amount of Bitcoin flowing into exchanges to be sold. This is because people want to take advantage of this high demand and these high prices to lock in some gains. Now, in the last week, there has been a slight decrease in Bitcoin inflows to exchanges compared to the previous weeks, which suggests that some of the selling pressure is starting to ease. But where did this sell pressure come from? Well, we can look at the data on the blockchain and we can look at the Bitcoin that has made a large US dollar gain since it was last received. And we can see how much of that Bitcoin that has made more than 25% or more in US dollar terms since it was last received, and see how much of that has been sent. In the week of the 3rd of August, there was a very large amount of Bitcoin sent that had made these high gains as people rushed in to lock in those profits. It was around 350,000 Bitcoin moved that week that had these gains. That's a level that we have only ever seen before in the 2017 bull market and in mid 2019. In the last week, the week of the 10th of August, there was still a lot of Bitcoin that had made these high gains that was moving, but it had stepped back quite a bit since the 3rd of August. This suggests that longer term holders, they took some profits in the earlier weeks, and maybe now they're sitting back and hoping for some higher prices before they decide to move even more Bitcoin that's made these high gains. It's a similar story for Ethereum. We've seen reduced profit taking last week after very high amounts of the week of 3rd of August, and that it's easing the sell pressure somewhat. These are still historically very high levels of inflows into exchanges and large movements of Ethereum and Bitcoin on chain, but it's certainly eased from what we were seeing a couple of weeks ago, suggesting that crypto prices have survived that initial sell-off and the demand is potentially still there to keep us going for some more weeks in the future. And a lot of this buying has really been supported by Tether. So Tether, the stable coin often used to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's seen all-time high inflows. In fact, on the 10th of August, $806 million worth of Tether, that's 9% of the supply of Tether on Bitcoin and Ethereum, flowed into exchanges. So that's a huge amount of liquidity to pour into exchanges to buy Bitcoin, Ethereum, other cryptocurrencies. But despite these record Tether inflows, it's not just Tether that's driving the market. We can look at the ratio of Tether to Bitcoin inflows to exchanges. Over the last 365 days, there's been enough Tether flowing into exchanges to buy 48% of all the Bitcoin that's flowed into exchanges over the same time period. It's currently around 53%, so above that annual average, but not that much above the annual average. That suggests that actually there's a lot of fiat pouring into crypto to buy that Bitcoin. So overall, cryptocurrency, it may be making a rare evolution into a larger, higher price market. We really need to wait and see whether these high prices can be sustained to see if we are in this new phase. But higher prices do appear to have survived the initial rush to take profits. But inflows to exchanges are still high. There is still a lot of selling pressure, but not as much as we've seen previously. And it looks like fiat purchases on exchanges are actually really important. And this is even despite the record Tether inflows to exchanges. So my big question is, do we end up in a positive or a negative feedback loop? Does the narrative of higher prices, potentially even activity in DeFi, encourage more people to enter cryptocurrency and therefore soak up this supply as people take profits? Or do we end up with an excess of supply too much cryptocurrency being sent to exchanges, which takes the price down and therefore takes some of the power out of the current dynamic of the market, which might mean we don't sustain these long-term higher prices. It's going to be interesting to watch and see what happens. Thanks for joining me.